and they just want to transition the airspace, we have what we call airways that are up in the sky. We have Q routes, we have J routes, we have Y routes, we have Victor airways. There's just numerous airways that are involved in a particular area to get to a particular place. And so the flight procedures team would really take care of that function. But again, when you hear flight procedures, a lot of times folks will interchange that with the south and north team when they're taking air traffic procedures. So I can give you a great example. Just recently, the south team and the north team have had a tremendous amount of interaction with the flight procedures team. And that's in the essence of if a particular airport, like we've got White Plains that has in New York, they've redesigned one of their standard instrument departures, how to get out of the White Plains Airport. And really, the air traffic facility overall will use that piece of design with the pilot community. And they'll come to air traffic sometimes first. They'll come to the north team or the south team just because air traffic has got the main user of ownership and provides the main service delivery on that particular design. But generally, we'll have to fold the flight procedures team because they do all the production work on it and so forth. So that's kind of how the flight procedure team work. And I just given you a very basic overview of what flight procedures does. They do a lot more. But let's get into the other team also with ASG. And this is a new team that was developed, I think, about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's still growing and it's still developing. And that's the airspace procedures team. Now, the notion on this is kind of taken a whole different aspect in the future it's going to take, and that's going to be more environmental-based, PBN-based airspace redesign. So remember when I went to the story in the very beginning, and I said, hey, I'm going to put this addition on my home? Well, that's generally what the airspace redesign team is going to do kind of in the future. Right now, we're presently working with a project with Louisville Stanford where the operations support group, with the assistance of many other groups, we're going in right now to Louisville Stanford, and we're doing just a study where we're looking at how to redesign their airspace, how to make their airspace more efficient. You know, what can we do to tweak the boundaries of the airspace? Can we raise the airspace vertically? If we raise it vertically, can we build new flight procedures? Can we talk to the PBN office and build these optimized profile descents into the airport so that a pilot can start at 40,000 feet and just float down until they get about 15 miles away from the airport? That's what the airspace redesign group does. So they'll actually go in, look and say, hey, Paul, you want this 2,000-foot addition? This is what we have to do to the addition. And if you want to do this to the addition, you want that super-powered solar fireplace, well, we're going to have to get planning and requirements involved. Once we're done with the airspace, or once we're done with your addition, we'll have to see how that's going to impact the national airspace system. So then we might have to fold QCG in there, and we might have to do an SRM panel on it. Also, the airspace redesign, when we're starting to see what the dependencies are, we might also have to fold spectrum analysis in there because it might need additional frequencies. We might have to fold BSG into the budget process. How are we going to get the money to sponsor such a project? So as you can see, remember what I said in the beginning, the ultimate goal that I want you to come out of here with is not really just knowing the basics of OSG, but what's more important is knowing that OSG does not work independently to the other groups. I can't stress that. I can't stress that enough. We really need to have that support from the other groups because it just doesn't all come from us. So just as a summary, again, and then I really want to kind of devote the next half hour to some of your questions more than me, again, just kind of, spooling out information, to you all, because you might have very specific, questions. The group is structured just like any other group. We have a group manager, we have teams, we have team managers, and we have a technical advisor. We have the airspace redesign group, we have the tactical team, we have the flight procedures team, and then we have the north and the south team. Now, one aspect I didn't mention, sometimes I always think, and Allison just walked in, sometimes I think they need to be a group in themselves, or sometimes even a team of themselves. But OSG has a support element of numerous contractors, but we also have a support element of an environmental staff. And we're looking actually to bolster our environmental staff, because we're noticing that work is starting to increase. But the agency is moving in a different environmental direction than they have ever had. A lot of times, airport noise would just be associated with airports. And that has changed, because air traffic has played a significant role in redesign. And so now an environmental aspect into anything that air traffic does, and when I say does, if we move airways, we move standard instrument departures, we move stars, we redesign airspace, we get the support of our environmental specialists, and that's also at the service center level as well as the headquarters. And the remaining portion of it, as I mentioned, we have contractors within our group. We have a bunch of Tetra Tech support. We have ATAC support outside of OSG, and we do that if we have any graphical designs that we need to support any of our operational intent within the group. So, with that said, any questions that you might have specifically about operations? Yes, sir.
Can you just give us a brief outline of procedures development or procedures changes? What's the typical timeline from start to finish, and what goes along in that process?
Sure, and I'll integrate the office, because I can give that to you, Cindy. I'll give it to Cindy when I'm more. But I just want to make sure, when you're talking procedures development, you're not talking air traffic procedures development, you're talking instrument procedure development. And all that. So if I'm not putting Cindy on the spot.
Okay, we work instrument procedure development, and when you ask timeline, a good example would be Atlanta VOR went out for a decommissioning proposal. And so what we did in our office, we evaluate every single approach, departure, standard arrival. We look at the airways, the holding patterns, to determine what would the work entail. At the same time, if it goes forward, it might report back to, I give to Melinda George, the report back on the proposal of how it impacts us. What I also did was I went and talked, knowing we have Metroplex going on, and I went and asked what it would look like to schedule all of the work that would have to happen, put into place to support the decommissioning. And so right now, for example, for that particular project, it would not be feasible until probably January 2020. It seems like a very long time, but we only have so many slots every 56 days. And we have to mesh all of them together. If you touch one thing, it reaches out and touches 3 more airports, and then that touches something else. So it's a trickle effect actually. The other thing, you asked timeline. If at a minimum, right now we're working, if you had something you wanted us to do in our office, and you went through, we have an online website, like a gateway, you put in that request. Right now, the routine, it was January 2018. Do you know? I think it just flipped a chart cycle. So we're looking at springtime 2018 for a routine request. You're going to move a runway, give me until that point in time to do your procedures. And it doesn't mean that it takes me that long to do it. We actually were the beginning point. It's an entire pipeline. When I tell you we can have your product, it includes, our initial feasibility work, going to the RAD meeting, presenting it to the region, obtaining their approval. We send it down to Aeronav Information Services in Oklahoma City. They actually develop it. They are the official developers. And we still work as a liaison between you and them to bring it to production. From there, it goes to their QC. It might get kicked back and forth a couple times. From there, it goes to flight check for scheduling. Flight check needs 45 days to schedule it, and what they have going on. When flight check receives a SAT, it goes back to AIS, and then they send it to the charting office. And so our timeline includes all these other offices that we work with to bring you your product. recently had one that had a weather cancellation, so it slipped, and we were doing some behind-the-scenes coordination to make it happen. And then after that, there was another priority for a navy going out, and they had to bring that online. So this little airport got pushed again. So I reached out to the airport. We ended up slipping. Well, we're working with him to get it published. However, it took a lot of behind-the-scenes work to make it still happen. And if it doesn't work out the way we're hoping it works out with flight check being sad, he'll have an impact. But the airport manager already knows about that ahead of time. So we're doing a lot of behind-the-scenes coordination to bring it all, to serve the customer. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. So good. So at least 2 years to anywhere.
2 years. I
Probably a
hate to say
minimum.
2 years, but if I could, 2 years would be perfect.
Yeah.
And if you're extending a runway or something, of course, we need to have the survey completely done. And right now, we don't do the survey, but when they coordinate for a new obstruction survey to support that new runway end, it can take 6 to 8 months minimum to get that survey through the system. We can't begin our work until that survey is actually done. So there's a lot of things that are, that prevent. So if you have something going on, definitely coordinate with us. If you shoot for 2 years, that's a good timeline. But let us know if you know. Okay.
And something Cindy hit on a little bit was she talked about the production capacity. And if you look at every 56 days, that means 1 year we have 6 cycles a year, and then the next year we have 7. So that's all the bandwidth we have to get procedures through the system. And we've got thousands of requests currently in the system. So we go through what I call our juggling act every cycle when we get high priority stuff that comes in or safety related stuff, and then we have to figure out what's the most important and move accordingly.
Yeah, and we say
Say again? What's up with 56 days?
That's the scheduled rotation, or that's the chart cycle rotation to develop and put things in these books.
Okay. And that information book also is incorporated into the nav boxes that the pilots fly, like if I change a runway, so it all has to mesh together.
So all that is what the pilots use?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the final product of what things look like, that we actually do the design, coordinate with air traffic, and then Oklahoma City does the development and charting.
Is that the thing that they have that now for like download or iPads and that kind of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we said 2 years, but we have, like the boss said, we have critical situations where, something, I know we had, even our small airports, we take care of that. We had an airport, a runway number change, we're working with him. We didn't make him wait a whole year. We're trying to get it in the system so he doesn't have to carry the NOTAM. So we work crisis, however, we try to pre-plan when we know.
So before we move on to answer our next question, what I want to go is just relate back to the beginning of my message. As you can see, there's, even with this situation, I'm going to give you another example of interdependency, interrelationships with the office, because that is the message I want you to come out of here. I know you came to get Know Your Service Center, and the topic was OSG, but the Service Center, I really want to emphasize, it's not OSG, it's all the groups. And so another example for that would be, let's say Plan and Requirements needed to know that production schedule because we're answering a congressional. So now how do all the groups kind of interrelate with that, right? MAC might get a notification from headquarters about a response to a congressional. That piece will go down to ASG. ASG will be really the authorship of responsibility for this letter or this response. ASG will reach out to the operations support group, right? Because it's got that air traffic, flight procedures mixed to it, and it might be talking about a particular airport or a particular air traffic services monocle. So now that's come to ops support, but inside ops support, even though it says procedures, it's not really talking about air traffic procedures, it's talking about flight procedures. So inside operations support, we'll reach out to the flight procedures team. They'll talk about their production schedule. They'll help, facilitate the response. And then planning and requirements might have some aspect to the project also. We've seen that with other projects where we've had hangars built and it would intrude on VORs, on vortex, on radars. And so each one of the groups have a piece for that response to give back to the service center director so that we can answer the congressional appropriately. So that's why some of those things these questions are really critical. It was a great question. Thanks, Matt.
So we have a lot of people from different groups in this room right now. If I wanted to go and work in OSG, do I have to have some type of specialized experience? Do I have to be an environmental specialist or an air traffic controller, or are there opportunities for other employees to maybe go into OSG and be helpful in OSG without having specialized experience?
Yeah, I think there's always opportunities to, I'm going to answer that in two ways. One is to shadow, and then another answer to you is really specific to OSG itself. It is a very specialized, or at least I believe it's a very specialized genre or office. The majority of our office is made up of 2152s, which is in a heavy air traffic background. Flight procedures in and of itself is a very specific specialty. I know for myself as an air traffic 2152, I would not be able to go in without any of that building experience or turf experience, be able to go into that specialty. Also, even though I've got an undergraduate and a graduate degree, I don't have any specialized experience in environmental, and so I don't think that I would be able to go into that, into that specific field. But operations support does have very targeted, specific folks. So I will say that if you're looking to apply and to get into operations support, yeah, it would take a very specific background. But to shadow and to learn what it's about, oh my gosh, I couldn't advocate that, that more to come in and work with the group in that sense, because just to see what we do on a daily basis, I think you would all be pretty. I know every group is busy, but I do know that operations support is busy. We just are. Because I'm up here right now, and I don't have a mic, but I have the mic, and I'm saying that we are. But we are. We really are. We're just as busy as QCG and planning requirements. Our stuff is just different. And I would highly recommend anybody. I know I've talked to many of you here, that have always been interested in just coming out and seeing, what we do for a day. Do it. You'd be shocked. I can tell you from the moment I come into the office for operations support, actually I can tell you probably before I'm coming in, as I'm in the shower, I'm, hitting my phone and answering emails at 4 o'clock in the morning. The air traffic system is robust, right? It's moving. It's 24 hours a day. It just doesn't stop. It's one of the neatest things in the world, and we support that. Just not operations support, all the groups. Yeah. So I would highly suggest and stress, please come shout. Anybody wants to come sit down with me for a day in the office, feel free.
Different question.
Yes, ma'am.
Of confusion between the flight procedures and air traffic procedures. What I gathered from your house analogy, is it safe to say that like the flight procedures part, they build a highway, and the air traffic side, they like determine the speed limit and what vehicles can go on there? I mean, is that? Yeah,
beautiful. I'll transition over to Cindy. Yeah, and she can supplement. But I think for me, I think that's beautiful. Right. So, normally our separation when we're following an aircraft might be 3 miles if we're at the same altitude and we're entering. So that would be the established air traffic, procedure. Now, they're flying on an ILS, an instrument landing system, or a standard arrival route that flight procedures built. So it would be like now transcending that to I-85. You know, I'm on I-85, and I can't be any closer. My Prius, which I know is a machine, ran
Do you really
before
drive a
you.
Prius?
I do drive a Prius.
That's awesome.
And I'm
Is it
proud
red?
of it. It's white.
You're not in that commercial.
50 miles to the gallon, by the way. But if I'm behind a semi, I have to maintain, you know, my 3-mile distance. And so that would be air traffic. You know, and again, I'm not trying to be simplistic with everybody. I do hope you're not taking it that way. I'm just trying to relay a story if you have no aviation background. You know, just try to get some kind of connection. So I think that's great.
Yeah, and one other
Build on that?
when I try to explain that, like when Michael's with me, my husband's an air traffic controller, they're like, well, how's your job different? And we always say, well, he separates planes from each other. I separate them from structures, from buildings, trees, you know, man-made structures, proposed towers. I evaluate the instrument procedures. We build those to protect from structures. They protect the aircraft from each other.
So you decided how tall the bridge could be that the truck could go under on the highway,
Correct.
and the highway.
Correct. And how big the terminal could be, the international terminal. The people mover across 85. We, instrument procedures evaluate structures on the ground.
No, great question.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I don't know if a lot of people realize it, but just this building here was supposed to be one building. And when they determined the evaluation wasn't done correctly, they had to take 2 floors off this building and put them across the parking lot. So that was because it impacted the procedures at the airport.
Why couldn't they just change the procedures?
Are you going to realign the runways? Are you going to say, don't build this building to 7 stories, let's make it 5?
Hope you enjoy it. If you have questions, call Laura. It's going to be your presenter. And we're going to get started.
I didn't have it on then.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. Take a seat. I'm Paul Laurie. I'm one of the team managers for the Operation Support Group. I'm the team manager for OSG South. That area I take care of, or kind of watch over, or the team watches over, is from the great state of North Carolina all the way down to Mississippi and out through the Caribbean. But what I'll do today is hopefully try to give you an overview of what the entire group of the operations support takes care of or kind of gets involved in. But what I'd like to do first is go around the room to see, I'm very familiar with a lot of the faces, talk to many of you, which is a wonderful thing, because I think the briefing today, or the presentation today, really, if there's anything that I connect, will be that one personal aspect, is that our groups are so independent with each other, and that if you learn, you know, a piece or two more about ops support today, and you walk away with it, you'll kind of get a little bit of more of a gist of what we do, and it might even give you that ability to, hey, let's reach out, and I think ops support can help on this. Or if ops support can't help on a specific task, but sometimes that is the case, we will be able to tell you really where to go and who to talk to. So that's kind of the ultimate goal for today. Come on in, come on in. Hey. Speaking of ops support, we have John Chambers and Brad Nelson. Okay, so let's start off with Jonna and Brad. Let them introduce themselves and where they're from. Put them right on the spot.
You just did.
That's what ops support does.
Good
You
morning.
stand there, Brad. Go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Brad Nelson. I work in flight procedures in OSG as an administrative assistant.
Good morning.
I'm Jonna Chambers. I work in flight procedures, admin assistant.
We'll go around this thing. We'll start off with Hazen. We'll kind of go this way, and we'll end with Andres.
Hazen Briggs, operations support. I work for Paul. I do whatever he tells me.
That's a good thing.
Go ahead.
Battle it out. Battle it out.
I'm Melinda Jackson. I'm a part of the task team on the ASG.
Welcome. Good morning.
And I'm Jan Miller, and I'm also on the training team in AHT.
Teresa White, Administrative Services Group,
Good morning. Good morning.
Paula Watson, Management Support Team, Administrative Services Group.
ESG. Do we have one? Do we? No, we don't. Mr. Gerald Lynch. Gerald.
Came to watch you.
So the introductions, what's so important again is that personal aspect. I mean, I can tell you everything that operations support does or doesn't do, but what's significant when you walk out of here is really you all as individuals and coming from the different groups, because we're all dependent on each other. Operations support, even though we handle a significant amount of volume of issues that come through the office, the one key thing is we can't really do it without the other groups. We can't do it without planning and requirements. We can't do it without ASG. We can't do it without BSG. And we can't do it without quality assurance. So if there's any one huge takeaway that I want you to take away today, it's not really what ops support really does itself as a group. I mean, get pieces of that, but it's really what operations support does at the end with the help of the other groups. And that is really the most significant message that I want you to walk away with today. And as you saw, Naomi and Paula kind of mentioned that they send a lot of work towards the operations support group our way, but we also send them a lot of work, because the end product that both groups put out is a representation of the service center, it's a representation of air traffic services, and it's a representation of the agency on a whole. So there's that dependency that is needed. And any time that's kind of fragmented, then it just doesn't really serve the purpose, which really, at the end of the day, too, are our customers that are out there. So I do not have visuals or a PowerPoint. I don't want to go there. What I'd like to do is first kind of give you an overall. I'll give you a story of the way that I think that OSG operates. I used this one time, I think, when I was giving a presentation at the Quality Control Group. And then I'll actually go into the technical aspect of OSG and then just see if you can bring the two stories together that way. And the only reason I use this story, and it's more of just like something that could be involved in our everyday life story, because then when I start talking about the technical information, you might be able to connect those two, bridge it, and then say, oh, okay, hey, that's what operations support does. And also, looking at the clock, I want to make sure, because to me it's also the most important thing, is that I leave some time here that if you have any specific questions, right, because I don't want to go the whole time me babbling, and then you have questions and then we're not able to get to that point. And if I don't have answers, then we'll find out the answers for you later, because I will tell you, I don't know everything, every little integral part about the operations support group, and that's the reason why we have other teams that are in there. If I need some flight procedure support, I would go to Gerald's team and Cindy, and I would try to gather that information. So the same thing, if I needed something technical as far as the budget's concerned or something about travel, I would go to BSG or I would go to ASG, and I would become their customers. So anyway, let's begin. I'll begin with the story. All right, the way I try to say or to try to relate OSG to everybody in a very common sense is I'm a homeowner. And I'm going to bring, I never brought PRG into the fold of this, but I'll bring planning and requirements into it. Hopefully I won't miscategorize what they do. But here I am. I'm a homeowner. Paul Laurie, right? I've got this house. It's about 6,000 square feet. And I want to throw another 2,000-foot addition onto my castle, right? And my neighbor next door is kind of always looking at me. I'm always building. I'm always putting something on. And when I'm giving you this story, I'm going to try to relate the other groups too, just so you can see how they connect. Because remember, again, our message is not only what OSG does, but how is everything interdependent, how do we work together. So I've got this massive house. I want to put this huge addition on it. So I hire an architectural firm, and I say, hey, I want to put this suite on. I want the suite to be with a patio, fireplace inside the patio, you know, I don't know, 150-inch high-def TV. I want the ability to have gas logs and fire logs. I just want everything. Jacuzzi in it, built-in kitchen, and so forth, even though I have 4 other kitchens in my house, right? So my neighbor is always jealous, and he's always kind of looking at me that I'm building on. And he goes, oh, I see you're doing another project. And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing another project. So inside my group, you know, certain things that I'm doing, I might go to flight procedures, I might go to the OSG North team, I might go to the OSG South team, things that are specific to my house. I have needs, right? My architect was doing up the plans. So now we've got these plans already established. But now I need all this equipment in. And so I might go to technical operations, or I might go to the planning and requirements group. They might do a map entry, and here I'm going to get all this stuff in my house, right? And so now the builders are coming, and they're actually building, and they're putting together this addition on my house. And my neighbor, every time I see my neighbor, he's just always got this sour look on his face, right? And trying to figure out, like, wow, how does he do this? How does he get this addition? How does he get, you know, all this stuff in there? So anyway, long story short, everybody's building, and now my addition is up, right? The electricians came in, they did all the wiring, and so forth. Well, guess what? After it was all done, it was going to go get inspected for compliance. And guess who walks in as the quality control group? My neighbor. My other group, yeah, my neighbor, now all of a sudden, for some reason, has gone from sour face, kind of going to a little bit of a grin. And I'm sitting there going, I wonder what's going on. Well, QCG kind of comes in and tells me, hey, we're out of compliance, right? My electric is not up to code. You know, and these are things that are just coming in a very healthy state and saying, you know, they're not in order. So that's how they work. And what I'm trying to get at is, you know, OSG, I could do all the work as far as with my architect, doing all the procedural designs, everything that I want for the house. But there's another group that kind of looks at the compliance aspect of it, right? And the planning and requirements group, they were helping me really kind of get all the equipment in, you know, that I needed. If I needed a rag sight or I needed a radar, you know, on my deck to spin so I can see my neighbor to find out where he's at, right? So they're kind of giving me those, you know, those pieces, ASG or VSG. VSG helped me do my budget so that I could stay within budget in the house when I was putting on the addition. ASG was helping me do the write-ups as far as the narratives that I need when I needed to go to the planning board and show them, the city council, you know, my documents. So what I'm trying to get at is there's a lot of dependencies when I was putting on this addition. I needed all those groups to kind of help OSG work. So what is OSG? What does OSG do? They are the operations support group. We sometimes feel like we're the one-stop shop for really everything. A lot of times folks will, out in the field, don't really know a specific task and where does it go. And sometimes they might come to our group, right? Because listen to the title, operations support. Operations, right? If it has to do with the operation, if it's a communication site, if it is a radar site, they might know that planning and requirements or the groups actually do, you know, with the physical equipment, but a lot of times folks just take, you know, the radar does support the operation. And so we get a lot of calls our way. The same thing with the house, you know. If I'm building all of this, there's certain things I'll be responsible for as the owner, working with operations support, but I also need the other groups to kind of, you know, to kind of fold in. So operations support is a group that's made up of 50, 60, 70 people or so. We have the same structure as the other groups as far as our managerial structure. They just have different titles. We have a group manager, we have a technical senior advisor now with the group, and then we're broken down into different teams. We have, for me, myself, I'm on the South team. I explained that I have from North Carolina down through the Caribbean. Then we have the North team, which pretty much takes care of Virginia all the way up to Maine. Then we have the flight procedures team. We have an airspace redesign team. And I think I mentioned we have the flight procedures team. I don't think I missed any of the tactical team. What's that? Tactical team. The tactical team, sorry. The tactical team. And when I get to the tactical team, you'll see kind of the difference even within the group. So let's start out with the group as far as just the South and the North team, because they're really kind of mirror images of each other. I joke around, and I always joke with Joey Metters, who's the North team manager, and his team, that I really just say they're kind of the counterpoint to my operational soul. Right? Whatever I do, Joey does. Whatever Joey does, I do. And they pretty much, as far as the team is based, like Joey's on leave this week, and we just kind of cover each other, right? Because pretty much what's going to affect ops-wise on the South is going to affect ops-wise on the North. Now, if you take the operational support group, if you actually take the title now, operations support, the North and South are kind of more focused on that. We're kind of more at the ground level of operations. And when I'm saying operations, a lot of time we'll have a lot of the first level connectivity to the facility. And I'll go into the tactical team kind of next to show you where the level of that connectivity is. So the South and the North team have specialists on the team, like Hazen Briggs, that's out there in the back. He's on the South team. He used to be a POC for the Magnolia District. And if you're all familiar with the district concept, we kind of just take an area, just a geographical area. We try to mirror that to what Air Traffic Services has. And so Hazen would be the POC for the Magnolia District. So he would try to assist all those air traffic facilities with really almost any operational question that they have. And again, remember though, we are always seem to be like the starting point, the platform, the diving point. Folks will come to us and say, hey, I have this issue with communication, let's say. I know April and I were working one that was in the St. Simons area, right? This was really kind of involved air traffic. It really involved a wide matrix of folks. But the springboard can come back because it's really basically at the service delivery point. It could be a particular air traffic facility. And so that's how it kind of delivers, to operations support. And so Hazen would have all these different air traffic facilities. You would have Memphis, Tracon, you would have Memphis Tower, you might have Birmingham Tower, Mobile, Alabama. They're all located in this district. But our air traffic South and North team are kind of procedure based on topics like lineup and weight turbulence. We deal with trying to help the facilities come into what we write between other facilities. They're called letters of agreement. It's more procedural aspects on air traffic as far as how planes are separated and the ATC services that we provide. I mean, that is the essence, at least I think, of those two teams, is how our directives, and we work really mainly by two big directives, and that's the 7210.3 and the 7110.65. Those are our air traffic procedural directives. The .3, the 7210.3, that's telling really a facility manager how they should manage and administer a facility, an air traffic facility. The next one, the 7110.65, that's a huge directive for air traffic in how we separate air traffic, right? How we provide our air traffic services. And so by those two directives, that's really where the North and South kind of works from the foundation of operational procedures. And sometimes it can deviate away from that folks don't know any other group to call, and they fold in ops support, and then we try to bring in other groups. It might really not be something procedural that has deviated, and the procedure itself might be solid, but the facility might not be in compliance with the procedure. So then we would fold in quality control. Going back to the example of my house, right? If something's not functioning in the house properly, I might not just be able to solve it within the operations support group. So, like, let's say a piece of equipment, the air conditioner goes out. Or in the case of St. Simon's, they might need an upgrade, or they might need additional equipment to try to communicate better. And so then we would need the assistance of planning and requirements or technical operations, because then there might be an engineering solution. It might not actually be an air traffic operational solution that's going to meet the need of our customer. So I just kind of wanted to just start off with that, just so you can kind of just see basically, really just a plain story about House, and then, a story now about the teams and what's happening in OSG. So we have the North and the South team, which are very operational driven, right? And then we go into the tactical team. And listen to the name of the tactical team, tactical, right? We can get out of it that they're very TAC-orientated, very real-time orientated. And I could give you some examples for that. If there's a VIP movement, the Vice President of the United States just recently went to go visit LaGuardia. And so the tactical team would get all of that real-time information. They kind of deal with system delays. They deal more with traffic management. They deal with systems operation, which is located here also at the service center. Anything that's kind of really directly impacting the operation real time is kind of what the tactical team does. And the tactical team also, and I'm just giving you pieces of what these teams do. The tactical team also deals with contingency planning. And that's a huge item right now in the agency, trying to get contingency and readiness. We've seen what happened in the Chicago area a couple of years ago, and so contingency planning is a hot item. And so if you had any questions, on readiness, SICOM levels, contingency planning, the tactical team, would be your point of entry into the operations support group. Right now, we're in what season? Anybody know?
Hurricane.
I'm a surfer. Who said it?
Hurricane.
Hurricanes, right? Okay, I might be the guy in the Weather Channel that you see out there bobbing when the hurricanes are coming. But Jim Dickerson, the tactical team manager, while I'm out there bobbing and surfing, he and his team, they're responsible. Again, here's real-time information. If they know that there's a storm, right? We just had a recent one come through, right? Colin just came up through the Gulf. So they always start as an invest, right? And then it'll be an invest storm, then it'll come up and it'll be a tropical depression, tropical storm, and then it could get upgraded to a hurricane. But Jim's team does that. That's their function. So again, I'm going to go back. You see North and South team, we kind of do the procedural aspect of air traffic. And when I say procedural, I want to stay on that word because the flight procedures team, hence flight procedures, you hear that word procedures, a lot of folks a lot of times will get those two things mixed up and kind of interchange them. And they'll get the teams kind of mixed up on who they go to. But let's talk north-south, ops, air traffic separation, air traffic procedures, air traffic management of a facility. The tactical team, think of it contingency planning, real-time information, systems delay. They work with sysops. They work with VIP movements. Anytime if there's an area, let's say there's a VIP movement here, the president's at LaGuardia, they can do a TFR, which is a temporary flight restriction, which you would think at my house, let's go back to the story of my house, I'm putting on this addition. It's such a big project. If I wanted to sterilize the airspace over my construction site, I would develop, again, a temporary flight restriction over that area. It wouldn't meet the scrutiny to do it, but I could try. Ms. Linda Oddie, who's the POC for that one particular task, would deny my request immediately because it doesn't meet the threshold. But that's, generally what the tactical team does. So just really kind of tactical, real-time, right now kind of information. Contingency planning, I would say, is really, not that real-time, but if something does go ATC 0, which the facility loses all its mechanisms really to function, now how do you go into a different state of readiness? How does another facility prepare to take over that airspace? So that's kind of like what the tactical team does. Now let's go over to the flight procedures team. Flight procedures, and Gerald and Cindy can help me on this to supplement, but flight procedures, normally if you look at, go back to my house, and I'm just doing this for folks that don't have an air traffic background. You know, go back to my house, and really to get to my house, you've got to get your vehicle and go on a road and then go into the driveway to get up to my door. You either got to